Hey everybody, Viva Khatri here, sitting virtually with Jolene Jangles. And I am super excited to have this conversation with Jolene to talk about her background. She's been in technology, product development, and leadership for 20 plus years and has worked in several different clients and helped work in agile coaching, in agile leadership. I have actually taken some of her agile coaching classes and facilitation classes. So really enjoyed learning from her. And she's actually shown up as a mentor, mostly as a coach, professional coach to me. And so she's got an amazing background, amazing mindset. She is a Brene Brown instructor on top of all the agile coaching works that she does. And is also a founder of a company called Balance Agility. Um, so Jolene, let's kind of dig in deep into your story of coming into Agile. So kind of share with us about your background and what you've been up to.
So I started in IT as many years ago as a developer, and I actually worked for a software company where we sold software, and I worked in a small team, and we did a lot of things. It actually took me years to realize this. We worked so directly with the client, and we did everything, and so we did things in a very agile way. Way before I learned what the word agile was. But as we got to the next generation product, I was introduced to Agile, and I spent a couple of years developing some of the practices behind that and learning how to move from I moved from my role as a developer to business analyst and then leader, and then I moved into and started working with Target, and I moved shifted over there as a business analyst and had a nice big failure with a traditional project, and said, well, let's not work that way again. Let's figure out what works for us instead. And this is, a lot of years ago. That's about 2005. And so this is quite some time ago, and wasn't as many agile practices evolved at that point, which was brilliant for me because that meant we had to figure it out. And so we really shifted, and I took what I had learned at the other company and said, hey, here's this ecosystem of a very large company that had a lot of challenges working, and we had this very small, couple hundred people trying to get something done. It doesn't sound small to some people, but in the target system, that was a couple hundred people, was not super huge. And let's start
Yeah.
shifting how we're going to do. And so we just had to learn how to do things a different way and really apply it in a system that was not shifting yet. So I
Mm-hmm.
worked in the target system for 9 years, transforming groups about that size, 150 to 300 people, of helping them shift their ways. It took a couple of years per each group because it's not hard. It's not a
Mm.
fast and quick thing to do to help transform them. So as their leader, I was able to shift and move and change them, and always within a bigger ecosystem of Target that for many years was not shifting. And then towards
Mm-hmm.
my end of my time there, they started to all get on board. I felt like I was part of that grassroots movement, so it was pretty exciting.
Nice. Yeah. So then in there, Jolene, you're saying that you are like a people leader, people are reporting to you, but you're also leading transformation at the same
Yeah,
time. So wow.
absolutely. Things not working was never a good thing for me. Like this
Mm-hmm.
whole failure rate of projects was never
Mm-hmm.
something that really, when I got to Target and we delivered our first project in our June project in October, we spent $8 million, and 75% of the functionality was never used. That didn't
Yeah.
feel right to me. Like it just said, let's
Yeah.
not do that again. And so I started shifting things so we didn't do that again.
Yeah. Wow. And so you are a people leader, like hands-on, subject matter expert. So a lot of that, and then you actually made a big shift where you kind of went the other side, like emotional agility, working with in the professional coaching environment and working on the trauma healing coaching. Like you've got this whole other side.
So it's not as big as a shift as you think. So I went into computers partially. I originally was going to be a psychology major, and I went into computers because I realized I wasn't going to be able to get my master's before starting work,
Mm,
and computers made more sense to me. But I found very quickly, when you work with computers, it's really not about the computers. They are logical, they're clean, they're easy, But you know what? To solve any kind of business problem, it's about the people. It's not about the computers. You can make them
Yeah.
do whatever you want, but you have to find the right thing to do. And figuring out the right business problem is really complicated. Figuring out how to
Right.
make people's lives better is really complicated. And so
Yeah.
I started like way back at the beginning realizing that, this computer profession I thought I was going into, it's all about people too. So then I started gradually moving into that. And so as a people leader and delivery leader is really where I would have put myself a lot of years. A lot of my success was my belief in people, my enabling them to do more. And like I would laugh because I have these huge teams of, a couple hundred people. And
Mm.
some of my bosses thinking I knew all the details. Nope, I just have good people. And so really
Yeah.
enabling and empowering and helping them be successful was the key. And then so when I started shifting into the consulting world, I really wanted to spread. The reason I did that is to start to spread that more, to bring that to as many people as I could.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And Jolene, I mean, I know you personally. I work with you, and you're an amazing training from the back of the room instructor, and you teach an amazing facilitation class, and you do Brene Brown coaching. So that's amazing. So we'll kind of get into that. But whenever I've actually talked to you over the past few years, we talk about agile practices and mindset, and you always make sure to bring it back to agility. So I want people to hear about your take on like agility over just agile.
Yeah. So many of us have seen the Ahmed Sidki's funnel from mindset to practices, and
Mm-hmm.
it starts with a mindset, and it's really about that mindset, and then you have the values, the principles, and the practices, and so
Mm-hmm.
often we get really focused on the practices, like when clients are, when transformations are happening, companies start to implement agile and put practices in place, and amazingly enough, they don't get any of the results that they want because it's not about the practices. There aren't any particular practices that really weigh the success or failure of projects or that. It's really more about the mindset pieces. It's really about flexing things, even in the abundance of scrum that we have. I think why scrum is out there so much is there's some really common constraints that we have in IT development, and scrum fixes a bunch of those, but not all of
Mm-hmm.
those. So when you
Right.
apply scrum to a problem that doesn't have the constraints that
Mm-hmm.
that scrum solves, you don't get any better of a result than you had before, and you're doing all sorts of weird practices seemingly for
Yeah.
no reason. So it really is about looking at what's going on and fitting the situation, and there's a whole bunch of amazing practices you can pull from and use. So it's not about, when I say agility not agile, it's not about discounting the practices because there's some good ones there. It's about taking on, looking at the situation that you're in and finding the right practices and things to do and ways of being that fit the environment that you have going on. And that's not
Yeah.
an excuse to not change, because many people try to use it for that. It's like, oh, but
Mm-hmm.
it's working just fine the way it is. And usually it's not. And usually
Yeah.
people know that when they really think about it. But
Yeah.
it is about shifting.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. So let's jump into our topic here. This is going to be a core of what we're going to talk about. This is around facilitation and coaching, and we're going to touch a few other areas. So let's just start with the facilitation topic. So you are a facilitation enthusiast. You love facilitation and teaching facilitation, and I've seen you facilitate great trainings, learning workshops, meetings. So what is facilitation? What does facilitation bring? And why is it important? So if you can
Yeah.
share with us.
Yeah, I like shifting what people think about facilitation or don't
Mm-hmm.
think about facilitation.
Mm-hmm.
It so leading meetings, leading classes, being in a group of people where someone is in the front of the room,
Mm-hmm.
directing the room is a pattern that we've all seen all of our lives and
Yes.
done to different degrees. But oftentimes we take on what's been modeled for us without any intentional use. And so we
Mm-hmm.
forget that or we don't even take the time to back up and say, hey, how could we do this better? So even
Right.
when you say I'm passionate about facilitation, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
passionate about people understanding that you can do it better and that you have a bigger impact if you facilitate appropriately. Like
Mm-hmm.
really doing it in a way that leaves room for, facilitation is the practice that enables the group to really get to the outcome that they need to get to
Mm-hmm.
by showing up and leading them through a process, potentially through some
Mm-hmm.
structured activities, some structured being. It's being
Mm-hmm.
planful and being ready for that. Not necessarily, not you. Actually, you kind of have to leave your expertise at the door. If you are an expert, it sometimes
Mm-hmm.
gets in the way. So, like leaving that aside a little bit and really leading the room in the flow and process of it in order to
Mm-hmm.
get to a certain outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And you said some really powerful stuff. And one of the things that I want to talk about is you talked about modeling, like what has been modeled for us, where we come from, which is like traditional school or like a workshop where we've seen one person come in and like deliver their amazing knowledge, or we've seen a lot of like actually training or teaching, right?
Yeah.
And even when scrum masters think about it, like it's about imparting scrum knowledge and enlightening the team. So a lot of the audience are come from that background, right? And I came from that background, and I've had multiple conversations about that. So um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because what you're bringing up for me, it might be a little bit of a tangent, but the difference between the word facilitation and the word facilitator. And
uh-huh.
I spent about 5 years in a data warehousing group, and
Yeah.
those people can spend those people. Data warehousing experts have a lot of focus on words, and I like to say that I don't think that way, but sometimes words matter. And
Yeah.
being an agile facilitator, like thinking of that more in the broader terms and thinking of it differently, that's probably somewhere I get more passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, one of the skills I need is facilitation.
Right.
And in that, I might have lost your question a little bit, but like, one of the big things that jumped to my mind is how important both things are.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, let's just kind of go into like agile team facilitation. I introduced the word Scrum Master, but you're more passionate about talking about agile team facilitation, and
Or an
you
agile
can explain.
facilitator. I'll go back and forth. One, because people are pretty comfortable with the Scrum Master term, but I like agile facilitator, or a lot of times within clients I'll use agile coach because they call that center, even that first level, an agile coach is,
Mm-hmm.
but an agile team facilitator, because Scrum is only one of the many good ways of doing agile, and
Right.
so it really is interchangeable. So in this conversation, we'll use
Yeah.
both terms, but I think Scrum Master assumes that we're going to use Scrum, and we want to make sure that we're flexible and agile,
Mm-hmm.
using agility and knowing that there's a lot more out there than just Scrum.
Yeah. So let's kind of dig in deep into the mindset of an agile team facilitator. What is a good agile team facilitator? What are some attributes? What are their mindset?
Yeah. You brought up before having a foundation of good knowledge of Agile and Scrum and Lean.
Mm-hmm.
Lean is another one that I would put in there. Having some
Mm-hmm.
base knowledge of it is really important, but it's really just your foundation. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that you should know and be able to use across a lot of your competencies, but it's really important to use more competencies than that. That's just kind of your toolbox, as
Mm-hmm.
you look at that, again, the practices of Agile. That's just having an awareness of those. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
you can look those up on the Googles and
Yeah.
find almost any answer you want about the Agile practices just like that. So
Right.
where a good Agile facilitator comes in is what they can do with it and how they can bring those to people. And so they
Mm-hmm.
use a lot of the skills, and I'll often use the Agile coaching framework from the Agile Coaching Institute,
Mm-hmm.
and really that talks about the different competencies with professional coaching, facilitation, teaching, and mentoring being four competencies that you really want to see strong within an agile coach. Again,
Mm-hmm.
three of the four competencies, you use that base knowledge really strongly, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really about using all of those skills to help
Mm-hmm.
your team be successful and grow more. Because it has the biggest key of it, the thing that makes
Mm-hmm.
an agile facilitator great is that they
Mm-hmm.
learn to focus on the team.
Right.
And with that, delivery gets done. Because that's one of the things that people a lot of times get off is that they think, ooh, it's all about people. It's not about delivery. And it's
Mm.
about both.
It's about both. Yeah.
When you focus on people, delivery happens better. More
Yes.
gets done. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not about people at the expense of delivery. It's about people so delivery happens.
Mm-hmm.
When we
Nice.
focus on delivery and ignore people, you
Mm-hmm.
actually harm delivery more in the end.
Yes. 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 That's powerful. You introduced the Agile coaching framework. So we're going to come back to that, but I want to kind of, talk a little bit more about like, okay, from a facilitation point of view, like let's talk about the general template, and this is what we do part of our class, right? So coming up with who, what, why, when, where, and I understanding who the meeting sponsor is and how to like start the meeting, get the work done. So like let's just kind of dig in deep into that framework. So how do you teach that to somebody who is um, maybe somebody who hasn't dug in deep in the facilitation as a standalone work?
Yeah. Well, so you use the term sponsor, and that's probably the place to start. Is like
Mm-hmm.
we often, again, modeled is we often have meetings on autopilot, and
Mm-hmm.
they're often we don't step back and say, "Hey, what do we want to do this?" We may be the one who's prompting the meeting, or it might have been say, "Hey, it's time to do this." So and so tells us it's time to go have this meeting, so we go and do that, without
Mm-hmm.
stopping and pausing and saying, "Hey, what is it that we do?" So often in my work in companies, one of the first things we do is a little bit of a meetings inventory because there's regular meetings that happen, and everyone's lost track of why they have it or who started it. It's
Mm.
really important to know who this meeting is for and who it is, who's your sponsor, who's the stakeholders. Two different questions. There'll be
Mm-hmm.
stakeholders for a meeting, like who's vested in it, and then there'll be a
Mm-hmm.
sponsor who's really the person that
Mm-hmm.
triggered it, who wanted it, who the meeting's for,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what they want to get out of it. Because like one activity that we do often when products are starting off or at a pivot point and they want to relaunch is we'll have some kind of product charter or team charter. Like we'll do activities like that, and there's some very
Mm-hmm.
scripted purposes for that meeting. But if you
Mm-hmm.
talk to a sponsor, like the person who's really asking you to do that, they likely have other agendas in mind. Like
Mm-hmm.
team might be new to the company and they want to be able to uh, get them on board and them understand the company culture. The
Mm-hmm.
team's been at the company for 20 years and they resist change.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want this change at all. We need to get them on board. There can be
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of hidden agendas. So one of the
Mm.
key things is to really step back and say, who is this meeting for? Why are we meeting?
Mm-hmm.
And what does the sponsor really want to get out of that? Because there's the clear
Mm-hmm.
purpose that we're doing. In the
Mm-hmm.
example that I gave, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
kick off a product and rally a team behind a product so they have a clear vision of where they're going to go. Very
Mm-hmm.
clean purpose. But then there's
Yep.
the sub purposes that you might want to know too,
Mm-hmm.
which is, let's use the example of we want to get this resistant team a little bit more on board. So understanding those, so like meeting with your sponsor, like that's one of the very first things that you want to do. So
Mm.
like when you talk about the frame, it's kind of the what do you do before the meeting? What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing in the meeting? And what do you do after the meeting? It's just kind of thinking of those three categories. And one of the very first things you do is step back and
Mm-hmm.
talk to that sponsor.
Right.
I could
That's
keep going for
powerful.
a long time on that. So what
Yeah.
questions do you have?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Let's just, we talk about those three things. Like what does preparation for the meeting look like? So what if you're mentoring a new Scrum Master or Agile facilitator, like what do you mentor them on? Like how to prepare for this meeting? So let's
Yeah.
just take that part.
Yeah. So preparing for the meeting. So first is that sponsor meeting, really understanding And even if it's yourself going through and ask those questions of the who, what, why, and how, like going through those and taking some time and doing that.
Right.
Understanding that it's important to step back and do this actually might be first, because you can
Yeah.
run on autopilot pretty easily. So first, like acknowledging that you have to do that, then stepping back and knowing that. And
Yeah.
really, once you have some answers to that, that's going to trigger what else you do. One of the things is kind of a basic rule of thumb for every hour of, like when you're training, which it's not the same rule for meetings, but it
Right.
influences the meeting one. When you're training,
Yeah.
they kind of say for every hour of class, you have 10 hours of preparation. And that, I think that's true. For
Yeah.
meetings, it can get close to that. For every hour, you should at least have, equal time, if not double the time, really planning it. And the better you are at spending some time designing that meeting, the more successful and easier the meeting will go. And
Right.
it doesn't need to look so designed when you're in the session. It's like software. The better you've designed it, the more user friendly it is, and it doesn't look over designed when you go to use it. So that's kind of your
Yeah.
goal for meetings, is design it to a level that it looks easy and like it's a automatic flow for the people that attend it. So
Yeah.
really understand what it's about with the sponsor and then spend some time doing the design of it.
Right. And Jolene, I mean, that's right. We have spent 10, 15 hours designing for a 2 hours workshop. And obviously this is
Yeah.
around teaching facilitation, but we talked about the impact of when we teach them this concept. What was the impact that it's going to have on them? Who are the different kind of students, their experience level? How do we make it real for them? What kind of activities do we use to like connect the concepts? So
Yeah.
there is a lot of that. And those are the same things, similar things that people have to think about uh, in meeting preparation.
Yeah,
Um,
knowing your audience is key. That's one of the things that you said, is really knowing who you're doing this for.
mm-hmm,
It is a key part of it. So establishing the who part is a lot more than just a list of names.
mm-hmm,
It's
yep.
understanding their perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And let's just kind of go into like the kicking off the meeting. Once you have prepared, once you've met with the meeting sponsor, really thought through like the meeting, who, what, when, where, how, and so then now it's time comes when the day's there, you have to kick off the meeting. So what are some practices that you mentor or teach people on?
Well, so you have to tell them all of that, the who, what, when, why, and where. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, pulling from the Agile Coaching Institute, one of the tools techniques I like to use and teach people is the power start. It's
Oh,
so it's so
I didn't know it came from Agile Coaching Institute.
yes,
All right.
it does. And it's a it's a huge time saver, and that's an acronym for
Mm-hmm.
purpose, outcome, what's in it for me, engagement, and roles and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
But the important part of it is really a narrative that really lets the grounds the group in what you're going to get done that day.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose and outcome sound very similar, but it's like there's a why you're getting together, and it's what you're going to walk away from. Outcome
Mm.
oftentimes is more deliverable based. There might be a literal deliverable, or at least a observable deliverable within an outcome.
Right. So,
And then
like for example, in a retrospective, team retrospective, what does that? How do you kind of?
oh, you want to put me on the spot and have me do one, huh?
Well, oh, I can.
So no, I can do it.
Yeah.
Uh, so so it's all about framing, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
a team retrospective is like, I'm just going to pretend you're all my team. So
Yeah.
hey guys, we're here to getting together today. It's been a great sprint,
Mm-hmm.
or a challenging sprint, whatever it's been. It's been an interesting sprint, and I really want to know what you guys think about it. So
Mm-hmm.
what we're here to get, we get together on a regular basis
Mm-hmm.
to improve, to look at how our sprint went and what we like
Mm-hmm.
about it and what we want to keep using and doing more of, and maybe some
Mm-hmm.
of those things that we didn't like and we want to improve of.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's important, you want to pay attention. I know it can be boring, and you might
Mm-hmm.
not, you might get sick of what seems like the same questions, but why you care is it's
Mm-hmm.
really about creating the team that you want to create. And
Mm-hmm.
so your input in here and your decisions here help us evolve the team in the way that you want to
Mm-hmm.
evolve. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking for you to give your opinions, be clear with what you want, uh,
Mm-hmm.
make sure it's not any finger pointing because you don't need to do, it's not about any one person's, it's about the system that we're taking a look at.
Mm-hmm.
I'm acting as the facilitator, so my opinions are going to be put on the table for today. I'm looking for your guys' answers around this, but I do want you to get up and move and be involved.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, that was beautiful, Jolene. I mean, you covered the entire thing. I just meant the P and the O, but like, yeah,
okay.
you did the entire thing beautifully. So yeah, I mean, you communicated what the purpose was, getting together as a team, kind of looking at what happened in the sprint, and then we will look at the outcome, and then you made it very clear that this is about looking at the system, and this is their meeting and their team, and you made your role very clear that hey, you're a facilitator, so your opinions here you might kind of step in and kind of share something, but it's not the main thing. The main people of the meeting are the team. So
Yeah.
that was beautifully covered.
Yeah, one reason I jumped into, because it's the best way to look at what it is the middle part there was about why they should be engaged
Mm-hmm.
and why they wanted to talk about it. Because if we don't let people who show up know why they care, they
Mm-hmm.
will be multitasking. That
Right.
keeping someone's attention is really hard. So when we
Mm-hmm.
design our meetings, that's something to keep in mind, that people can only pay attention for maybe 10 minutes ish. Um, you might think of it as a TV culture, but it's more that TV was designed over what our brains naturally do. We've got about 10 minutes in us, and that's all we can pay attention. It's
Yeah.
just that's physically what we are wired to do. And so you've got to give a person a reason to even give you that 10 minutes. And then
Yeah.
with that 10 minutes, you better serve them well and then switch it up to be a little bit different so you can get another 10 minutes out of them. But
Yeah.
when you start up a meeting, whatever form you're going to do, you need to give them a reason to pay attention. So I love that you picked one of the Agile ceremonies, because oftentimes, because we do them all the time, we forget people have to be convinced to pay attention. Oh, they'll just come. But then you
Yeah.
end up getting really bored and really unproductive Agile
Yeah.
ceremonies. And then there's not a point to be doing them.
Right. Right. And that's a beautiful way of setting the stage, and kind of showing up very intentional. So that's great. So that's a great way to open up a session. So that is, you've done a big part of the work. You've started the meeting with a good intention. Everybody knows why they're there. What they're gonna do over the next time box. So let's just kind of look at some of the things that, as a facilitator, you can do while you're doing the work or in the meeting. And you would have already prepared this in your meeting design and planning. But what are some things that shows up while you're facilitating the meeting? What are some things that facilitators need to know?
Hmm. There's so much.
Yep.
So I think, as you said, you will have designed this in advance, but make sure that you're using some techniques that fit what you're doing. I talked about the
Mm-hmm.
product visioning earlier. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things we often do when we product vision is spend a lot of time talking about the things that people already know and agree on. There
Mm-hmm.
are different techniques out there that optimize that let
Mm-hmm.
you write down the things that you agree on and not talk
Mm-hmm.
about it anymore, and then move on to the things that you don't might not have alignment on and you need to get alignment. So
Mm-hmm.
use varying techniques to get to the thing that you need to get to, because
Mm-hmm.
people like to talk, they really do, and they will talk
Yeah.
forever. And so you, as a facilitator, your job is to change up and move things in a way that's going to help them get to the place that they want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a
Mm-hmm.
key part. Um,
Yeah.
Another thing that I would say, keep it moving. I talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Always keep it moving, and then be aware the who's in the room, knowing that
Mm-hmm.
people bring a lot of different personalities to the room and a lot of different things that have happened in their day.
Mm-hmm.
And so do things to help ground them and show up in the room, and then
Mm-hmm.
also treat people with the respect of knowing that they can have a different perspective. And there's all sorts
Mm-hmm.
of different processes around, we play different games with dysfunctions to
Yeah.
try to go around, people are going to show up, and including us,
Yeah.
that one of the questions I always ask at the end then is, what's your dysfunction when you show up in it? Because we
What drives you
all have
crazy?
them. we
Yep,
all we
100%.
all have them.
So, I mean, a little bit of like self-awareness as well. Like, hey, it's not just, you're thinking about the room, like what makes you go crazy and like what will you do? How will you self-manage yourself if something like that happens so then you can be effective in facilitating this meeting.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Obviously, we teach a 16 hours class on this, so we're not going to be able to talk about the nuances and what happens. How do you prepare? How do you think about different things? But let's just keep it moving, and let's just talk about. There's a lot of things that happens within the meeting, and there's like things like decision making. How do you do decision making, and then how do you collect the data, and how do you help people decide? How do you help people do brainstorming? So there's all of that. But let's just go into like, you've done the work. Now it's time to close the meeting. So what are some things that we need to know around closing the meeting?
That's going to depend a lot about what you did. And the first thing is,
Mm-hmm.
don't skip that step. Like, that's one of
Mm,
the things that I would say is, don't skip the close. So often we run out of time. So we're in the middle of exploring the topic, exploring the content, the agenda, and we've left no time left to close that meeting.
mm-hmm.
So make sure that you leave space. And I'll admit that I'm guilty of this myself often, because there's so much good stuff and you just don't have enough time ever. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but leaving some space in another thing that I pull from my training space that I think is very applicable to the meeting world too, is make this real for people. So
Mm-hmm.
often, like, we will show a PowerPoint, we will talk about something, it will be done from the front of the room, and we will expect, because we've said it, then everybody's in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Getting people to truly make it real and make it theirs is important. So there's
Yep.
different ways to do that. Like, closing circles is one technique that we do, like getting people
Mm-hmm.
to write something down for themselves. What is your to do out of this meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the traditional stuff is still valid. Is what are the action items and who owns them and what's going to be the follow up? Those can still be very valid in
Mm-hmm.
even with agility. When you're running
Yep.
things with agility, clear is kind, and the more clear you can be on who's
Mm-hmm.
doing what, the better it is. As long as that's not the driving factor, that the
Mm-hmm.
reason you're being clear is about people, not process,
Right.
you always want to be clear. So a lot of that
Yeah.
standard stuff is really important.
Yeah. So yeah, that's around closing the meeting and some of the things that happen after the meeting. So yeah, we've talked enough about facilitation, and there's a lot more to be talked about. So I want to get this conversation going and going into like the framework, kind of pick up that agile coaching framework, looking at the, what is that called, the hex, no,
The TIE fighter.
yes, yes. So where we have, coaching, mentoring, teaching, we've got facilitation on each side, and then we've got the lean agile expertise, and then we've got like the transformation stuff.
Yeah.
So let's just start with, we talked about facilitation. Let's just kind of go into coaching, like the professional, not just the team, like the sports coaching, not that kind of coaching, but professional coaching, that body of work. So what is professional coaching, and what happens when somebody's experiencing coaching?
Hmm. Wow, those are a couple of big questions. So, in professional coaching, it's a space where you have shifted your focus from
Mm-hmm.
both of you. So the opposite of professional coaching is mentoring, which we'll talk about as well. But in a
Mm-hmm.
professional coaching space, instead of looking at the problem with your coachee, you're looking at your coachee. And
Mm,
it's really a shift in perspective where your focus becomes that coachee, and your goal is to help them get to wherever they're going. It's
mm-hmm,
holding that coachee as a full, wholly responsible person that knows all of the answers, and truly believing that about the person and helping
mm-hmm.
them get there. And only in the when I'm playing in the agile world do I always call it professional coaching and differentiate, but that's just so you can tell the difference between agile coaching, which is all of it, and professional coaching, which is one of the tools you use within agile coaching. But when I'm
Right.
playing in the professional coaching space, it's really about helping people take what they already know and find their own answers. That usually is getting them to a bigger place. There's a great visual we have of it, of being little on one side of the wall and something they want on the other side of the wall, and really having the conversations and the discussions that help them get bigger. So not so they can necessarily move over it, so they can see over the wall, because they already know how to get over to the other side. They just have to be able to see it. So helping people live bigger
I
and
like
know
that.
more.
Yeah, I picked up a few powerful things that you shared. So first of all, coaching is very different than mentoring. So it's you holding the space with the coachee, and you're looking at the coachee, not the problem, right?
Right, right.
And you said it's a crazy idea for people who are not familiar with the professional coaching work. And it took me a while to understand this. So you're saying that you're gonna show up in this conversation assuming that I am whole, I am creative, and I have capacity to come up with all the answer.
Yeah, you have the answers.
Yes. So that is, for somebody who's learning this concept for the first time, they might struggle with it because I struggle with it. So you're saying that you're just going to completely like trust them and then just think that
Yeah.
they have the answer. And so like the whole thing changes after that, right? Once you lay that
You're
as a
gonna you're
foundation.
not just gonna think that they have the answer. You're gonna know that they have the answer.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Um,
I like that you talk about how difficult it is for people, because it is. We
mm-hmm,
have been conditioned and rewarded and paid for being the expert and having the answer and saying the right thing that
mm-hmm,
helps people get over that wall. Like,
mm-hmm,
that has been what we've been conditioned in life for.
mm-hmm,
And we might have a path to it. Being someone who coaches, like a lot of agile coaches, agile facilitators, there are a
mm-hmm,
lot of common problems. So, do I
mm-hmm.
have answers for them? Absolutely.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean I have the answer that's best for them.
right,
And that's
right.
the difference here. So I could
Mm-hmm,
mentor, like, one of the things about the framework, as we'll talk about dancing around it, is that you can use almost anything. But a benefit of coaching is people get to find the answer that fits them most.
mm-hmm.
Because for the
100%.
most part, I've learned that people don't really do what you tell them to do.
No.
They do what they want to do. So coaching, professional coaching gives you a way of helping them find what they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you just tell them an idea on how to get there, there's likely not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jolene, we've actually demoed some of the coaching conversation in front of the class, and we always have a blast. But one thing that comes to mind that I want to add is like when you're mentoring, let's say you have a lot of really good experience leading people, and you work in Target and in healthcare. So one of the things if yes, for example, if you're coaching coming in, you're the agile expert, you're coming and coaching me, and I work on a startup. um, you might have some great idea, but like you're saying that because I'm in this new environment and I am whole and creative, that even some of the answers that you give me, if you just give me the answer, I might not be ready for that,
Right.
or for whatever reason I'm not applying. So you're just helping me explore what are the right answer, what are the next steps, where am I being stuck. So
Yeah.
those are the things that you're exploring.
Yeah. Yeah. And this almost goes back to the agility is,
Mm-hmm,
you know, if we blindly go apply agile practices, and that was our goal, if a
mm-hmm,
success is applying agile practices, sure, we have the answers for them because we are the experts in agile practices. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to have the great answers about doing that. But
Mm-hmm.
that's really not the goal. The goal
Right.
is being better at delivery. The goal
Yeah.
is meeting a business goal. The goal is figuring out the business goal. Like there's all sorts of other reasons that we're really after, and they're the experts at that more than us. So
Yeah.
helping people get there is going to be so much more powerful for them
Yeah.
than giving them
So
the answer.
yeah, so like, so Julian, this is a great topic. I think we should go deeper, and we should like show our audience what does that look like. So
Yeah.
I mean, you know about what I do, and you know, with the training stuff and the business. So we're gonna take a stance that I'm struggling with something. So, are you ready to coach me?
Yeah, give me a time box because it'll.
Let's just say we go for 3 to 4 minutes.
Oh, so pretty quick. Okay.
Yeah, maybe 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So we'll just do a little bit of coaching.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me what's going on.
Yeah, Jolene, I'm doing good. The pandemic's been crazy. Um, Business is doing good. I've been staying fairly productive. However, you know, there's just that feeling that there's so much more I can do, and there's more impact that I can make. So I'm kind of feeling, I'm just kind of having a little bit problem with a little bit of balance, what's the right thing to do, and then like um, also around like it's not enough.
Mm. So you said a bunch of things right there. What's important about it to you? Yeah.
Yeah. So the most important thing is about feeling like there is there is more I can do, even though I think I've done good amount of work. So how do I, you know, I'm
So
just kind
I'm
of
hearing
struggling
you.
with,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
hearing you doubt yourself a lot.
yeah,
What do you think that's about?
doubting. Huh. That's yeah, that's true. What is that about? I am I'm aware that I'm doing that. Um, I don't know if it's about performance. I don't know. I'm kind of stuck there, Jolene.
Yeah. Well, you went back into your head. I saw that happen. As you were thinking about it a little bit, and then you remembered we're on
Yes,
a podcast, and you went back in your head.
yes, yes, Jolene. So, and that's another thing, which is you know, I'm an overthinker, or you know, I shouldn't label myself like that, but there's time I go there. So,
So you talked about not having enough impact, or there's a lot of messages of not getting to where you want to go.
mhm.
Where do you want to go?
Where do I want to go? I You know, one of the things that I'm trying to focus on right now is just like the online, the content piece, the online courses, and the the podcast is a new thing that I started. So you know, kind of, I'm
So that's
having,
some of the do's.
yeah,
What is the impact? What is that's just your checklist.
yes,
What's
yes,
important about any of that, though?
that's great. So what's important? The impact is, you know. I've got certain amount of talent and we've got limited amount of time. So I want to make an impact in the world.
And what would it look like if you made an impact?
Yes. What will it look like? People. Hmm. So what would it look like?
That might be a big question. Is that a place to leave it for some homework?
I think so. Yeah, we're going pretty deep there. So that might be a we will have a follow-up conversation on that. So that was beautiful, Jolene. Thank you. Thank you for taking me there, and I'll have a follow-up question around there. And but that was a beautiful coaching conversation demo, I think. So you all got to see where, Jolene didn't go into solution, and although she has some great ideas, she could have easily like mentored me, and she also was really good at like I was like kind of producing, kind of telling her a few different things, but she was really good at like getting me to like look at me and like what's important to me. uh, that was beautiful. So then you got me from 3-4 things to like what's important to me, and then we talked about just the impact and creating success, and then she actually brought that to me. It's like, what does that look like to me? Which is it opens the whole another possibility, and has nothing to do with like the courses or like the podcasts. So that was beautiful. So
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed lately is how many parallels in when we look at all this agility that we try to bring to our teams and to our
mhm,
products, like how much
mhm,
that could apply to some of the ways that we think and our own mindsets and our own sessions and
mhm,
like, I can't remember what you said that triggered me thinking this way, but oh, the checklist, like we can get really wrapped around the axle around. And if I was in mentor mode or friend mode, I might have talked about this, but it
yeah,
wasn't what served you at the moment. But that
right,
we can all get wrapped around the axle around that checklist of things to do. But that's not really the
mhm,
important part. And that this kind of demonstrates the power of coaching is I had to
mhm,
self-manage some of my thought of like, oh, he's getting wrapped around the axle about this list of things to do. That's just like what
yes,
we do on a team when we have a list of requirements to meet. Like
right,
I've been noticing that, but letting that go, as
yeah,
my self-management and really going where you need to go and what's important is
mhm,
much more in service of the
yeah,
coaching
yeah,
than
definitely.
that
So
theory.
I wanna highlight a few things that you did. You did you had a great coaching presence. So you were there listening. I could feel that. You're very hardwired, level 2 and level 3 of listening. So intentful listening. And you had a lot of self-management. So like, you know me, and we're in a similar line of business. You have a lot of expertise. So
Yeah,
you did a lot of like holding back in terms of giving me the answer. So
I did.
um so
Yeah,
those are the core.
another urge that I thought that I think many will have if they listen to that was to try to make you feel better. Oh
Yeah.
no, you're doing great. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
you've accomplished and impacted so much, which is true for you.
Yeah.
And there are times as a coach that might be what needs to be acknowledged. But in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, that's what wasn't what again what would serve you. But like that
Mm-hmm.
is a hard thing for people to self-manage too, is not
Right.
trying to, let the
Yeah.
person have the space to feel what they're feeling, not what you're feeling about them.
Right. 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 Yeah. So let's just talk about a few things around that. So like like different levels of listening. Like if you can share a little bit more about listening, self management, and the coaching presence. Um,
Yeah.
and we can wrap this conversation for coaching.
So that's a lot. I'll start with levels of listening. Uh,
Yeah.
so he's referred to that a couple different times. And so levels of
Mm-hmm.
listening are just simplified. We'll talk. It's around where is your focus and how are you
Mm-hmm.
showing up. So level
Mm-hmm.
one is where we walk around in the world and how we show up most of the time. That is,
Mm-hmm.
in our own heads, paying attention to what's important to us, which
Mm-hmm.
is what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, when I teach these and introduce people to level two and level three, they start to feel guilty about level one. But level one is the very normal place to be. And if you start showing up in level two with your friends all the time, they're going to get really irritated because they need their friend to show up at level one. So that's
Right.
absolutely where we live most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Level two is a shift, and it goes with along that focus that I talked about with coaching is that it's a shift
Mm-hmm.
to laser focus your attention on your coachee. really
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to them in many different ways. But really, the focus is not on the story as much, not on your own story that you might make up. Like I just went on that little squirrel after he talked. Don't pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to that squirrel while you're going, because that's what we do at level one. But
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to them and only them, because when you do that, uh, you can pick up on so much more, and you can help know what's in service of them versus what's in service of you.
Mm-hmm.
And level three starts to go even further, and you start to pick up with everything around them. And this is a stretch goal. When we teach this in
Mm-hmm.
ATF, in
Yeah.
Agile team facilitation, we say this is just a stretch goal at that point. But as you move into coaching, it's starting picking up on everything that's going on around you. And what that
Mm-hmm.
includes is like starting to sense things from your coachee. So you're picking
Mm-hmm.
up with your intuition more, and you're doing other types of listening. You're picking up on your feeling what it sounds so woo woo, and the engineer in me hates when I have to talk woo woo, but it's true. You start
Yes.
you start to sense things and know things. I do a lot of coaching on the phone, and you can know when they're smiling. You can't see them, and you can know when they're smiling. There's all sorts
Mm-hmm.
of level three things that you can tap into that help
Mm-hmm.
you understand. We call it global listening, is another name for it. So
Mm-hmm.
those are three different kind of listenings that really start to like being aware of them and
Mm-hmm.
understanding where you're at and purposely being there is important,
Mm-hmm.
because they're tools you can use as a in your coaching world and paying
Yeah.
attention. Um, what were the other things you asked about?
Um,
I
coaching
knew,
presence and
yeah,
self-management.
self-management. We hit on that a little bit already, and so it's really
Mm-hmm.
around letting go of your own stuff. I mean, I
Mm.
don't know that it's more complicated than that. Is
Right.
knowing your own stuff is going to come up, and with that,
Mm-hmm.
your answers for them. Your
Mm-hmm.
want for your coachee is going to be so strong. It's going to be hard not to give them the answers. That's one way that's biggest thing new coaches have to do, new agile facilitators have to do, is that they have a
Yes.
want, and you can't provide all the answers, and you have to
Right.
self-manage letting that go. I heard just today it explained very much, many of us have heard the definition of meditation, where it's like something will come to
Yes.
you and you just need to let it go and float away. Same thing with the ideas that come to you when you're
Yeah.
self-managing.
Yeah. No, that's
Another,
that.
yeah,
Oh, go
another
ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say another tip I have for it is sometimes articulating it. Like there's certain topics that are so, foundational to something I know. I can't like get over the fact that they talked about it and I want to say it. So sometimes I have to say it. I'm really distracted. Your situation sounds like one I've heard so many times. I can't help but want to do it. And by putting that out there, you've self-managed it in a different way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, we were in the session together. Somebody brought that up. Yes. And the metaphor of meditation. Whenever you're meditating, a lot of these thoughts come in. So whenever you're coaching, these things, I'm pretty sure, showed up to you. Being that natural subject matter expert, being that agile expert, like, you know those things will come even as a scrum master or agile team facilitator. So if somebody's taking a coaching stance, being able to self-manage and not, I don't want to say vomit the answer, but like not give
Yeah.
them the answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and agile, not agility, comes into play here too, because if you know the agile answer, that might not be the answer for the room. That's another place you have
Mm,
to self-manage. Is
right.
like, but you're not doing it by the books. They said the agile's gonna work this way. All these other companies have it work this way. It's really hard
Right.
to let that go sometimes. And so one of the ways as an agile coach that I deal with that is let a lot of things be invitation based. I
Mm,
have this
invitation.
information, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
I will very rarely tell a team that they can't do something. I
Mm,
might tell them is like, hmm, I've seen a lot of teams do this, and this is the result they have, and I'm very honest and open about the negative impacts that could happen. But there
mm-hmm.
are very, very seldomly that I say the words no. And one of the reasons for that is that when I do use it, they take me seriously.
Right.
Because it's
Yeah.
it's so infrequent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thanks Thanks for sharing that. And I think in to close this topic, I think we talked about self-management and
Love
not
listening.
giving the answer. Yeah, listening. So let's just use that to contrast with mentoring. I think most people know mentoring, but how do you now people understand coaching? Now, how will you um, share how does mentoring show up in Agile?
So good mentoring,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm differentiating because there's lots
Yes.
of styles of that. But good mentoring is going to have a lot of similarities. But the
Mm-hmm.
the focus, I talked earlier on about how the focus is different. So in good mentoring, you are both focused on your coachee, and you will both be looking at the problem together because you're trying to come up with a solution together. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very common pattern that you find.
Mm-hmm.
And you're using your SME-ness in whatever way
Mm-hmm.
it is to potentially give them ideas. Again, in good
Mm-hmm.
mentoring, it is when they're in coaching, you explore and deepen the learning for the self. You help them go deeper in themselves. You get when you're in mentoring mode, you can bring in your own expertise and background to help them with it. But if you're doing
Mm-hmm.
it well, it brings a lot of that sameness to it. You can
Mm-hmm.
still you're still just throwing some ideas out there. As I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, we have a lot of common problems. So like
Mm-hmm.
I might throw out a couple different ideas of how I've seen that solved.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing it well, you're still then putting it back to them and saying, okay, I've given you a bunch of ideas. What do you want to do about it? So you
Mm-hmm.
still give them the chance to make it their own
Right.
and morph it. So I would really
Yeah.
say that you can have you can do mentoring in a better way that brings in a lot of the same energy of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But we do this in our class where we do the mentoring and then later do the coaching, and the energy of the room is not nearly as high,
Yeah.
not nearly
Yeah.
as excited.
Yeah. Definitely. So, so we talked about coaching, professional coaching. We've talked about mentoring. We talked about facilitating, and then the last thing,
Before we
this is very. Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
before we move on though, I want to make sure as I talk about professional coaching bringing out so much more in people and mentoring, as an agile coach, both are essential because there are things from that agile space, from the
Mm-hmm.
agility space that people don't know. And so as
Right.
much as people do have a lot of the answers and a lot can figure out a lot of the solves, they aren't magically going to understand what a scrum team is. You know,
Mm,
if they don't have the knowledge, they're not going to get the knowledge without help. So
right.
that's why, as an agile coach, it is essential to bring both to the table,
Mm-hmm.
and that is important. We just want to make sure that you don't shortchange opportunities when you could coach
Yeah.
and go to mentoring.
And then when you say agile coach, you mean a scrum master might be a team agile coach. That's
Yes,
how you're
yep, yep,
referring.
yep,
Yep.
yep.
So that
An
this is
agile team
very applicable.
yeah, yeah. An agile team facilitator is a the first level of an agile coach.
Yep. Yep. So and then there is the fourth thing on that map, which is the teaching, which is like
Yeah,
training, teaching, which is pretty simple, like
yeah.
sharing your expertise on how objectively, right? So like let's like kind of talk about the dance, like as a facilitator or scrum master, how do you do the dance to be of service to the team, to a team member?
Yeah.
Let's discuss that.
Well, first, I want to comment teaching isn't so simple. There's a lot of ways to do that poorly and not poorly to get people to listen.
Yes.
And then I'll go into the dance. You know,
Yes.
one of the things it having all the tools in your toolbox is important, and really trying to pick which one. It's not so straightforward. So this answer is going to sound fuzzier. Is knowing that you need to dance is one of the most important parts of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to be clean and make sure everyone understands what we mean by dance. It's really like move amongst the different tools and shift. I love that we gave such a quick coaching demo because it shows how you can go into it for just a couple minutes
Mm-hmm.
and pull from that world, even if you're not in a full out session. Like
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I will have, very specific reasons to show up as a professional coach with my coachees, and then the rest of the time I'm dancing within.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that we use that example, and it's
Yeah.
really pulling in and out of each of the things and pulling from the different areas to help them in the way. And so, like, some play in this area is like, know that you can help almost any problem from all the different stances. You can show up in any of the four stances as a facilitator, as a
Mm-hmm.
coach, as a teacher, as a mentor, and you
Mm-hmm.
can help almost any problem, and then combining them a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
100%.
how do you know, like what generates the most energy? Like is
Mm.
how you know if you succeeded or not. And I think
Yeah.
otherwise I'd say experiment with it. There aren't a lot
Mm-hmm.
of right or wrong answers.
Right.
So experiment with it. Except if you overuse any one of them, you're doing it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is probably a good point to like wrap it up, and we'll definitely have a part two of this conversation. There's a lot more. There's team coaches versus enterprise coaching. We had some great tips for agile facilitators in terms of building trust, talking about vulnerability, courage. There's a lot of great topics, but I think this is a part one of the podcast, and I thank you so much for this really energizing conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We'll be sure to come back with more exciting videos on Agile topics.